tonight, our katha is taken from the Kathopanishad. Can we say that? Kathopanishad? Kathopanishad is one of the Upanishads. And so let's talk first about where it falls within the structure of our Hindu texts. So we know that all knowledge is found where, Priya? In the Vedas. The Vedas consist of all knowledge about everything. Anything you can think of, knowledge of it is found in the Vedas. And then from the Vedas came our holy Upanishads. And the Upanishads were conversations. Conversations that occurred between two rishis, or husband and wife, or child and parent. Many different beautiful kathas, beautiful conversations came out of our Upanishads. And so this Kathopanishad is very, very special. And it's one that is more popular, discussed in satsangs. So tonight we're going to take a look at a katha that many of us might be familiar with. So there was once a Brahmin by the name of Udalaka. Can we say that? Udalaka. And this Brahmin had one desire. You know, many of us say, if I get this one thing, I will be happy. Right, Rob? If I get this one thing, I will be happy. And so this Brahmin, he had one desire. He thought, if I have this one thing, I will be happy. But this desire that he had was a big one. He said, Udalaka wanted to conquer the world. If I could get this one thing, what is this one thing? I want to conquer the world. And you know, a lot of times in our scriptures, who is it that wants to conquer the world? The Rakshasas, right? We often hear that it is the Rakshasas who perform this tapasya and so on to conquer the world. But conquering the world is not necessarily a bad thing, is it? All of us want to conquer our own worlds. Isn't that so? All of us are trying to feel some level of control and power over our own individual worlds. None of us want to be at the mercy of anybody else or anything else. And so Udalaka, he wanted to conquer the world. Power isn't necessarily a bad thing, it is what we do with it, right? It is what we do with it that might make it a not so good thing. So Udalaka, he was a very learned Brahmin. And he knew that in our Vedas are found formulas for everything. And so he knew that there was a special yajna that he had to perform in order to conquer the world. Can you believe it? There is a yajna that he could perform to become master of the world of Bhagami. And so this ritual was known as the Vishvajit Yajna. Vishwa means world, Jita is victory. It was known as the Vishvajit Yajna. Like all rituals, like all yajnas, like all formulas found within our Vedas, it is a formula. It is an exchange of energy. There is a prescribed method for performing it. And so what we do is what comes back to us. And the way we do it is the way it will come back to us, right? So sometimes we perform pujas and rituals and so on half-heartedly, and then we say, but why isn't it working? Why aren't we getting the results that we want? So Udalaka, being this very intelligent and learned Brahmin, he decided to perform this Vishvajit Yajna. But for this special yajna, there was something, you know, oftentimes what we want is matched by what we have to give. It's an exchange of energy. And so in order for Udalaka to get mastery of the world, this one thing that he had to do was to give up everything he had. There's a saying, it is only when God empties our hands can he fill it with something else, right? But many times we are unwilling to let go of the things that we have, but yet we want more. In physics, there is a law of impenetrability. And that law says that no two things can occupy occupy the same space at the same time. No two things can occupy the same space at the same time, yet we want to keep what we have and we want more to come in that same space. Right? Now, how do you call somebody who keeps adding and adding and adding to their possessions without letting go of anything? A hoarder. You call them hoarders, right? So, this yajna, it required udalaka. You have to give up everything, and you will get this mastery. You will be able to conquer the world. And so Udalaka, he started to get ready. Now, Udalaka wasn't only a very, very good Brahmin, a very intelligent Brahmin. He also had another wonderful quality. He was a fantastic father. He was an amazing father. And at Udalaka, he had a son whom he called Nacciketas. Katha starting to sound familiar, hopefully. His son was named Nacciketas. And Udalaka had taught his son very, very well. Now, at the time of this Vishvajit Yajna, Nacciketas was around 7 years old. And he was observing everything that his father was doing. And he saw that his father was gathering some of his possessions and so on to donate in charity. And this Brahmin also had many cows and so on. And so, like little children, is following his father around, looking at what he is doing. And Nacciketas noticed that his father went to the cow pen, and he was only taking out the very old and feeble cows to donate. Right? So the Kathopanishad describes these cows that Udalaka was going to donate. It said that their bodies were worn out. It was as though they had eaten their last meal. It was as though they had drunk their last water and had given their last milk. What does that mean? The cows looked like they were about to die. And these are the possessions that Udalaka decided to give in charity. Now, Nacciketa, like I said, his father had taught him very, very well. And he was filled with a lot of trust and sincerity. And he started to think. He said, donating such useless cows cannot be right. This cannot be the right thing that my father is doing. And he said, the person who donates these nearly dead cows will surely go to hell, where there is no possibility for happiness and joy. This is what this 7-year-old child is thinking. And so Nacciketas, he said, I must therefore discourage my father from doing such a thing. I must save my father from this hell that he is putting himself in. Now in Bhagavad Gita, Bhagavan Sri Krishna, he speaks about giving. Udalaka is giving, but what is he giving? And what does he want in exchange? Is he giving the quality of what he wants in exchange? Bhagavan Krishna, he speaks about how we should live. And next week is Christmas already, and many of us have spent a lot of time thinking about our loved ones and thinking about the perfect gift for our loved ones. And we do our best, and we hope that they like and they appreciate the gift that we give them and they would find it useful. But how do we give? And what does Shri Krishna say about giving? In Bhagavad Gita chapter 17, verses 20 to 22, Bhagavan Shri Krishna, he describes 3 types of giving. He says, some people, they give in the wrong place and the wrong time. When is the wrong place and wrong time to give? Is there a wrong place and wrong time to give? Bhagavan Shri Krishna is saying there is a wrong place and a wrong time. If you are giving to somebody and that will bring embarrassment to them, isn't that the wrong place and time? He says they give to persons who are not worthy of receiving what you give. Who is not worthy of receiving? Somebody who has already. There are people who are in need. Bhagavan Krishna says there are some people who give contemptuously without showing respect to the receiver. Here, take that. Take it and go. You want something? Beggars come to our home sometimes, and you give them with no care. Take it and go. And Bhagavan Krishna says this is tamasic giving. This is giving in the mode of ignorance. Bhagavan Krishna continues, he says, some people give reluctantly. I'll give it to you, but I really would like to keep this for myself. Or, I'll give this to you with the hope of a return. I'll give this to you if you give me something in return. Or there's an expectation of reward. Even if that reward is recognition or even gratitude. I give these people this thing and they even say thank you. How ungrateful. So much time and thought and money I spent going out of my way to get this thing, Uncle Bobby, for you, and they didn't even say thank you. How ungrateful, right? We look for something in exchange, even if it is gratitude, even if it is thank you. And Bhagavan, he says, it's a little bit better than tamasic giving, but it's still not good. It is rajasic giving. It is giving in the mode of goodness. In the mode of passion. And he said, the third type of giving, he says, sometimes people simply give because it is the right thing to do. They give without consideration of anything in return, not even gratitude. If they say thank you, it's okay, Uncle Bobby. If you don't say thank you, it's okay. Right? He says, and they give at the proper place and time. They think about the appropriateness of the giving. And he says, this is sattvic giving. Now, which type of giving do we do? Which type of giving are we planning on doing? This message is hopefully appropriately timed as gift exchange is coming up. Gift exchange, right? Yes. And so, Bhagavan says, but here's an even higher type of giving than this. So the first is, you're giving in the wrong place at wrong time. You're giving to people who not worthy of it, and you're giving it contemptuously. The second is you give, but you give reluctantly, and you expect gratitude. And the third is you give because it is the right thing to do. But even higher than this, Bhagavan says, is when we give, not thinking that I am the giver. When I understand that of all the things that I have gathered, I am only the custodian of those things that were given by Bhagavan. I am only the instrument of giving that will take this thing and give it to someone else. It is really Bhagavan's. I am only the channel through which this goes. So with Rajasic, with Tamasic, Rajasic, and Sattvic giving, there is one thing in common. I believe myself to be the giver. But with the highest form of giving through Nishkam Karma, I understand that I am only the custodian. It has come through me, not from me. And so, there is no ownership of it. I look for nothing in return. I offer it and say, Om Shri Krishna Arpanam. Oh Lord, I am doing this as worship to you. So in the case of Udalaka, he didn't care about Nishkam Karma and all of that. He wants something in return very clearly. And so, nothing is wrong with that. Nothing is wrong with that. But Udalaka is giving contemptuously. He is giving the things that he don't want. He is giving, but he really doesn't want to give. He is withholding the useful cows and giving the ones that are about to die. And little Nacciketas, he notices this. And he knows it is not right. So the young boy, wanting his father to think about what he is doing, he goes to his father and he says, Oh Pitaji, in this grand Vishwajit Yajna that you are performing, you are supposed to give everything. To whom will you give me? To whom will you give me? The 7-year-old boy is asking his father. So, Udalaka looks at his son and he says, What kind of question are you asking me, child? Nacciketas says, Father, you have always told me that I am the best that you have. So, to make your yajna successful, you must give me. To whom will you give me? so Udalaka, I would imagine if he was a Trinidadian, he would excuse, right? Udalaka, he ignores Nacciketas and he continues along his way. So Nacciketas goes to his father again and he says, Father, you didn't answer my question. To whom will you give me? And you know, sometimes when we are doing something that we shouldn't, or we are not doing something that we should, we get annoyed when somebody points it out, right? We get annoyed, especially if that someone is a child. And as adults, it is very embarrassing sometimes for us if a child has to correct us, right? But Udalaka has done such a great job with Nacciketas that this child knows. And so, many times as adults, we hide our embarrassment with anger, right? And so hearing his father's silence once again, Nacciketas asked for the third time, Father, Pitaji, very sweetly, to whom will you give me? Udalaka is now infuriated, and without thinking enough, he says to his 7-year-old son, I will give you to Yama. I will give you to Yama, O Nacciketas. Now this is essentially a curse of death that Udalaka has given to his son. Now I want us to remember that Udalaka was not a bad person. He was a good Brahmin. He was a wonderful father. But anger, which comes from the ego, because Udalaka's ego is hurt when his son dares to question him. So ego leads to our anger, and our anger leads to us not thinking, the intellect stops working, and so Udalaka places this pronouncement on his son. So Nacciketas, he hears this. He hears this pronouncement that his father has made. Now how would we respond if our parent said this? You know, sometimes our parents say things to us, right? And we're like, I can't believe you said that today. Me and my mother used to fight all the time, out of love. Just like Nacciketas and his father had a very open relationship where they felt like they could say anything to each other and they could discuss anything freely. And yes, we might get upset for a minute, but the next minute you're good. My mother and I was the same way, right? And so sometimes our parents say things, sometimes we as children say things without thinking about how it would impact the other person. And hearing this, what does Nacciketas do? He says, he starts to think. About most things, I have followed the highest conduct. I have done my best in most things. He said that there are some things that I am a little remiss. There are some things that I don't do very well. I am only 7 years old. But I have never exhibited bad behavior. So why has my father given me to death? So Nacciketas is pausing. And the intelligence of this child shows in his next question. He says, what could be the work of Yama that the Lord of Death has worked through my father to make this pronouncement? What is Yama trying to accomplish through my father? What is it that he is trying to teach the world? And so Nacciketas, he doesn't fall into despair. He shifts his intellect into gear. He doesn't start to cry. I probably would have started crying when he plays. He doesn't start crying. He thinks something good must come out of this. My father has said these words and they come across as harsh, but I am sure he intends some goodness out of this. This is how Nacciketas sees his father. And so he decides to follow his father's command. He's not about to wait for death. He is going. And so he says to his father, before he leaves, he says, Pitaji, I have said to you the best that I know. And he tells his father, he says, consider how your noble forefathers behaved and how people otherwise have behaved. You have come from great rishis and munis, O father. Think about how they have behaved. This child is speaking to his father. And think about how otherwise people behave, and you decide what is the right thing he says, "Do not be sad, father. Now honor your word and allow me to go to Yama." And with that, Nachiketa, he bowed very respectfully to his father. No angry words, no resentment. And he left for Yamalok. Now when Nachiketas reached Yama's house, he found that Yama was not at home. Yama, probably COVID time, right? Yama is out doing his work. And so Nachiketas, he told Yama's wife, "Mataji, don't worry." Yama's wife was saying, "I cannot let this child in. Essentially, I am taking the life of this child." No. She says, "Oh, Nachiketas, I cannot allow you into Yamluk. My husband is not here. Please go back. Please go back to where you've come from." Nachiketa says, No. I have been given an instruction. I will wait for Yama to return. And so, it is said for 3 days and 3 nights, Nachiketa sat outside the gates of Yamluk, waiting for Yama to return. So when Yama finally got home, his wife said to him, she said, "You know, when a Brahmin comes to our home, we are supposed to receive them as though the divine being himself has come. So it is our duty to prepare for this child, give him our hospitality, but instead we have kept him waiting for 3 days outside. This child has not eaten, he's not drank anything, he's not slept, he's not done anything. Go and receive him with reverence." And so Yama, he goes to Nachiketa and he says, "Oh Brahmin, you are an honored Atiti. You are an honored guest here at Yamlok. You have stayed at my house for 3 days without food. Therefore, you can ask for 3 blessings from me. You can ask for 3 blessings from me." So Nachiketa, he smiles because this is exactly what he wants. So we join in Kirtan before we hear what Nachiketas asks for. Ram Ram Jai Raja Ram, Ram Ram Jai Sita Ram, Ram Ram Jai Raja Ram, Ram Ram Jai Sita Ram, Ram Ram Jai Raja Ram, Ram Ram Jai Sita Ram, Ram Ram Jai Raja Ram, Ram Ram Jai Sita Ram, Ram Ram Jai Raja Ram. And he says, oh Yama. Now listen to how this child is addressing the Lord of Death. Oh Yama. Bravery, confidence. Uncle Bobby, how would we approach death? Run from it, hide, try to avoid it at every cost. We do everything we can to deny getting old, because old age brings us closer to death, or so we think, because death has no age, right? And so this child, this 7-year-old child, maybe because children are fearless, he says, oh Yama, as the first of the 3 blessings, I ask that my father, Udalaka, may become peaceful, joyous, and free from sorrow and anger. And when I am sent back to him by you, may he receive me lovingly as his son. I want us to notice the intelligence of Nacciketas. Though this is one blessing, he's asking for a few things, right? He's asking for a few things. The first thing he asks for is the well-being of his father. He's not angry with his father. The first thing he asks for is the well-being of his father. He says, may my father be peaceful. Nacciketas knows that there is no way his father could be at peace after what has happened. Can you imagine what his father is experiencing now that this child has left for Yamlok? He's been gone for 3 days. So Nacciketas is very emotionally sensitive. He knows that his father must be suffering. And he says, may my father be peaceful. But not only peaceful, may he experience joy. Nacciketas understands that joy is not possible without a foundation of peace. Is it possible to be happy if we are not peaceful? Maybe temporarily for like a slight, very, very short speck of time. But joy is not possible without a foundation of peace. So not only do I want my father to have peace, I want him to have joy. And not only do I want him to have joy, but please remove anything that will threaten that peace and joy. So no sorrow, no anger. Look at this blessing that Nacciketas is asking, not for himself, but for his father. And we think about another child who had asked for a similar blessing for his father. Who are we talking about? Bridgelal-Maharaj. Bridgelal-Maharaj ki jai. When Narasimhadev asked Prahlad, ask me for what you want. He said, O Bhagavan, may my father, Hiranyakashipu, be freed from all of his evil deeds. Be free from the consequences of his papa. These beautiful children who have developed such intelligence. And he says, so that's the first part. I want my father to be peaceful, joyful, free from sorrow and anger. And when I am sent back to him by you. So he's asking, are you staying here? No? I'm not staying here. When you send me back to my father, and I'm not going after fighting you, you will send me back. So he is asking for his own freedom from death, and for Yama to grant him that freedom gracefully, without a fight. When I am sent back, let him receive me lovingly as his son. Let him not be angry with me. Let him receive me with love. So, Nacciketas, he's asking for that restored relationship with his father. Let my father not be angry with me. And so in this one blessing, with these many blessings disguised as one, Yama, he smiles at Nacciketas, his intelligence, and he says, Tathastu, so be it. Now having his first blessing granted, Yama says, okay, now child, ask for another. And so Nacciketas, he says, you know, Lord, I have heard that in Swarga, in heaven, there is no fear. Even you, Yama, you, death, you are not there. There, nobody is afraid of old age. He says, those living in Swarga are beyond hunger and beyond thirst, and they are free from suffering. And I have heard that they are in bliss. O Yama, tell me what must be done through which one will attain Swarga. Tell me what will be done, what must be done through which one will attain Swarga. And so Yama, he explains to Nachiketas the science which bestows heaven, and call it a science because we understand, those of us who are studying Bhagavad Gita, this very intricate formula required for the attainment of heaven. And so Yama, he explains in detail all the processes involved. And now Yama said to Nachiketa, okay child, now that I have said it to you, repeat it back to me. And Nachiketa very expertly, he repeated the details back to Yama, and Yama was satisfied. Seeing Nachiketa's extraordinary intelligence, Yama was pleased, and he said, in addition to you having this knowledge of Swarga, he says, I will grant you an additional honor. The science of the inner fire that must be performed to attain Swarga. What is the inner fire? This internal purification that must be done will be known as the Nachiket fire. So that will be named after you. And he says, please accept this blessing along with this beautiful necklace. And it is said that Yama gave Nachiketa a beautiful necklace of precious jewels. Now it was time for the third blessing. And Nachiketa, he knew without a doubt what he wanted. And so Nachiketa said to Yama, he said, you know, there is so much uncertainty about death. Some say that after death there is nothing. Some say that all we have is right now. Some say that the soul lives on after death. Others say that it does not. He says, I want to finally understand this through your teaching. This is my third wish. Now Yama is thinking, this little 7-year-old boy, why is he asking about death? And Yama is thinking, you know, it is harmful to teach the secrets of the Atma to somebody who is unworthy of receiving the teaching. You know, in Bhagavad Gita class, we talk about the different types of students, right? And so, Yama says somebody must be qualified to reach this very sacred teaching. So seeing the need for a test to see, you know, this again reminds me of Kartikeya going to Lord Brahma and asking to be taught the secret of the prana mantra Om. And Lord Brahma says, this child, before he starts reading the alphabet, he's asking me about the highest knowledge. And so Brahma, he underestimates Kartikeya, which results in him being tied up and heaven being taken over, right? But Yama doesn't do this. Yama, he thinks maybe Nachiketas will not understand this knowledge. But let me test him. Let me test him and see. So Yama, he begins to try to dissuade Nachiketa. And he says, you know, child, you're asking a very complicated question. What happens to the soul after death? That is a very, very complicated question. He says, even the Devatas in heaven do not have this knowledge. It is not easy to understand. So please, Nachiketa, do not ask for such knowledge. Now Nachiketa, he hears this and he says, what? Even the Devatas in heaven don't know this answer? Then you must tell me, because you know. And who is a better teacher than death? Who is a better teacher than death? Nachiketa is saying this. If it is complicated, then death is the best teacher. So you, Yama, you must teach me this. Yama then tries to tempt Nachiketa with all the riches of the earth. He tells him, he says, oh Nachiketa, I will give you grandsons. Not only sons, I will give you grandsons with lifespans of hundreds of years. He says, you know, children are our way of ensuring that a little piece of us continues to live on. So he's giving Nachiketa this. He says, asks for cows and cattle, which is symbolic of everything we need to sustain our lives on earth. He says, ask for elephants and horses and gold, which symbolizes not only our sustenance, but our prosperity in this world. He says, ask for an empire with vast boundaries, which symbolizes power here on earth. He says, ask to live for as long as you wish. You can choose the moment of your death, right? Bhishma. So everything that you could possibly want on this earth to be happy, he offers it to Nachiketa. He says, Nachiketa, if you consider a wish for wealth or a means for living a long life equal to your wish for the knowledge of the soul, you can ask for that. I will give it all to you. You will be the greatest emperor on this earth. I can make all of the greatest pleasures available to you. But Nachiketa, he insists, he says, if Yama is willing to give me all of these things in exchange for that knowledge must be better. And so he says, not at all. None of these things are equal to me than having the knowledge of the soul and what happens after death. Nachiketa is a child, but he is thinking long term. Sometimes even as adults, we want the quickest pleasure. We want the fastest, the instant happiness of the world. Instant coffee, instant everything, instant Wi-Fi, instant everything. Wi-Fi too slow, wireless thing loaded, right? And so we want that short-term pleasure. And we don't necessarily think about long-term. Nachiketa, this 7-year-old child, he is thinking, what will I do? What will I do with all of these pleasures of this world? And he says to Yama, he says, oh Yama, the pleasures that you are describing are temporary. What will I do with that? So Yama says, okay, Nachiketa, you asked about Swarga. If you don't want the things of the world, let me give you all the riches of Swarga. I will give you the seat of Indra himself. He says, I will give you Gandharvas and Apsaras and chariots and musical instruments and power and all of these things within Swarga. But do not ask to know what happens after death. And Nachiketa, he is undeterred. He says, even that is temporary. Even Swarga, even heaven, that we think will last for a very, very long time, even that will come to an end. And not only that, Yama, you're trying to trick me. He says, when I indulge my senses in these pleasures, what will happen is I will become dull-witted and I will lose my sharpness. See how well Madhuban has taught Nachiketa? He says, furthermore, a lifespan, however long, will be brief, and it will end sooner or later. So, oh Yama, you can keep all of these things. You can keep all of these things. Nachiketa says to Yama, he says, humanity is subject to decay and death. Everybody that is born must die. But man doesn't seem to know that. He says man lives as though he will never die. Man does not know if the soul lives after death. And so, I wish to know, for the benefit of all humankind, tell me what happens to this soul after death. Man acts as though this life is all there is, and forgets that it is but a drop in an infinite ocean. And so, relentlessly, Nachiketa, he did not allow Yama to persuade him otherwise. And having tested Nachiketa, Yama was convinced of his determination, of his desirelessness and his fearlessness, and his worthiness to be taught the science of the Atma. Shri Krishna Chandra Bihari Lal Ki Jai. So what is the secret that even the Devatas do not know? We don't have time today to talk about it, but I will tell you where to look. Srimad Bhagavad Gita has all of the secrets that come from Yama, that come from Bhagavan Krishna himself. And so as we continue in future satsams, we'll talk about this greatness, this great secret of the soul. But tonight I want us to think about, so many beautiful lessons from this katha. How well do we teach our children so that they are able to question us? And do we have that same space for them so that they are able to challenge us in a respectful way, but that they are able to challenge us? We want to challenge our parents when we have questions, but in a respectful way, as Nacciketas has done. And do we teach our children well enough that they can stand on their own and recognize what are the truly important things in life and in the life after? So many beautiful lessons from this katha. So tonight, we'll end here and we'll continue again in our next